Mistweaver is currently in its best performing season of Mythic Plus ever, which has brought a lot of new people to the spec, and it has been awesome to see everyone enjoying it, whether they're returning after a hiatus or they're playing it for the first time. With the influx of players, there has also been a lot more questions than usual, and there's been a pattern with what people are struggling with within the spec. So today we are going over the 5 most common mistakes that I see Mistweavers make in keys and what to do instead. First up is the incorrect spell prio based on our target count. One of the more prominent things I've seen in the spin to win meta that we're in right now is players not swapping rotations based on target count. With the current tuning, we should be using spin and crane kick on 4 or more targets for damage, and for healing, it depends on the pattern, but the maintenance healing, it's technically 3. I say technically because it isn't going to do a lot of healing on 3 targets, but it's still more healing than the single target rotation would be. So realistically, if you need anything beyond maintenance healing and have 3 targets, you're going to be hitting a cooldown. On anything less than 3 targets, you're going to do your regular melee rotation, which is Rising Sun Kick, 2 Tiger Palms, and Blackout Kick. Another technicality here, if you get lucky on Rising Sun Kick resets, then technically 1 Tiger Palm could be better than 2, but honestly it doesn't matter a lot, you can do either 1 or 2. The point is more just that you want to use Rising Sun Kick on cooldown and fish for resets with Blackout Kick. You'll see people do both. You might see actual Mistweaver mains do 2 more often than 1 just from muscle memory, since it has been 2 for the longest time, I think since Shadowlands. So that could just be a relic of old habits, but it really doesn't matter that much either way. And then for any target count, you are going to be using your Dance of Chi-Ji proc. So 1 target, 5 targets, 10 targets, doesn't matter. If that button lights up, you're pressing it. Respecting the target count kind of leads into the next mistake, which is misunderstanding your damage conversion. Most of Mistweaver's healing does come from damage conversion. AoE is Way of the Crane, and our other abilities like Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, and Blackout Kick all heal through Ancient Teachings. That being said, we do cast a fair amount, especially in single target or low target count situations. So there's 2 sides to this issue. One of them is players not relying on their damage conversion enough, which results in them casting more, which is going to give you lower damage overall, higher mana consumption, and ultimately falling behind in healing and potentially having people die. When you stop using things like Rising Sun Kick because you're casting so much, you lose Renewing Mist uptime, which is losing maintenance healing, Mistline, which is some of your prio on your lowest target, and the amp from Lotus Infusion. You are also draining your mana very quickly, and you may not be able to recover from that based on the fight length. There are encounters that we have to cast quite a bit, but they are usually a short period of time to deal with high bursty damage on a few players, but this is still a really small amount of encounters with time to allow us to recover mana. On the flip side, some people rely too much on their damage conversion in situations where Ancient Teachings isn't enough to keep up with the damage and they should have been using a cooldown or a Megasett spell instead. Knowing when your damage conversion is enough or not enough honestly just comes from practice with the dungeons and with the spec. More often, I'm seeing people casting too much, so just remember that Way of the Crane is very strong on multi-target situations and it can heal through almost anything if you have enough targets. Part of this also comes from discomfort with being in melee, which is non-traditional for healers, so it's very understandable. But this again just comes with practice, and it's also worth noting that Spinning Crane Kick, your main AoE healing ability, the hitbox on it is slightly larger than the visual, so it's a spinning square and the visual is a circle, so you get a little bit of extra range on it. Understanding the damage patterns in the dungeons will help a lot, as well as paying attention to how your healing splits. Way the Crane heals 1 person at a time for every instance of healing, and Ancient Teaching splits evenly among injured. So you'll be able to rely on damage conversion more in single target when there's only 1 or 2 people injured compared to the entire group. This is probably the biggest one that I see, where cooldowns are either not used enough or you're using too many all at once. As far as not using enough cooldowns go, I think that this is more common at the lower to mid levels of keys since most of the damage can be healed without them, so you may feel like you don't need them, which may be true. If people aren't dying, they're not dying, and that's most of healing anyway. But even using cooldowns at suboptimal or unplanned times can help smooth things over, or in the case of Celestial Conduit, it also contributes to the damage that you deal. With Conduit of the Celestials and Heart of the Jade Serpent, you're getting the damage from Conduit, but also the cooldown reduction, specifically for Rising Sun Kick and Thunder Focus Tea, and these are both 4 damage. So even if you don't need the healing from the cooldown, you can fit an additional use in, then you should, for the damage. On the opposite side of things, using too many cooldowns is maybe even a bigger issue than not using them enough. If you're using all of them at once or too many at once, or using them in the wrong order, this can leave you with nothing depending on the boss timers or the damage events. Planning out your cooldowns will help you not oversend. I like to think of it as a budget for each mechanic. If you spend too much on one mechanic, then you don't have enough for the next, or you might need to make someone else pay for it with a raid cooldown, or you'll just die or wipe. You should have some idea about how much your cooldowns can cover and if there's any particular patterns that they are good or bad at, and you also want to know about how much damage each boss will do, or any potential scary overlaps. I recently did a video about cooldown planning, so if you find that you are regularly having no cooldowns left or just don't know where to use them, then that video would be worth checking out, and I will link it in the description. Next up, we have Renewing Mist. This is kind of a funny one this season. So it is important to have good Renewing Mist uptime. We have a lot of talents that interact with it and make it stronger than the base ability. This is like Mistline and Lotus Infusion. But the uptime rarely comes from actually pressing Renewing Mist. Most of your uptime is going to be coming from Thunder Focus Tea with R4 piece, and from Rising Sun Kick with Rapid Diffusion. You'll get some from Enveloping Mist as well, but that's typically only during Chi-Chi or during an Enveloping Mist ramp when you have no other cooldowns. Between your 4-piece, Rapid Diffusion, Rising Mist, and the frequency that you use Rising Sun Kick, your uptime should be pretty high, even without actually casting the spell itself. You can use Renewing Mist stacks when you're running from pack to pack or when you're waiting for roleplay to finish, but you should not be interrupting your DPS rotation to apply it manually. Just as an example, this 23 Magister's Terrace, the HVS that Renewing Mist did by itself on the last boss alone was about 7,000, but it would peak around 20 to 30. For the entire dungeon, I only had 8 actual casts of Renewing Mist. And with so few manual casts, I still had 88% uptime on the spell. So yes, it's an important button, but you're not going to be pressing it over something else like Rising Sun Kick or Spinning Crane Kick, at least while you're in combat. And lastly, we have Mana Tea. This is the best way to manage your mana throughout the entire dungeon, not just individual fights. This is both through drinking out of combat and utilizing your Mana Tea when in combat. Even if you are at relatively high mana, but you have high Mana Tea stacks, you should be sipping either between packs, while your tank gathers, or during boss combat when you can't be in melee to heal or there's just downtime in the damage. If you know that you're going into a difficult fight or know that you will be in combat for a long time, but you know that combat will drop before you get there, hold on to your Mana Tea stacks to try to bring them with you into the fights. That way you're not starting from zero and you have a little bit of a cushion. Our mana economy is very good at the moment. There's very few situations where you'll go if you're playing correctly. That doesn't really become something you need to think about until very, very high keys. But again, mana management is basically a game that you're playing for the entire dungeon as opposed to pack by pack or boss by boss. If you have good mana discipline, then you can sort of use it as its own cooldown when you are out of real cooldowns. With Soothing Mist, we can spam healing, and when you have no other tools available, it kind of becomes your best option. But it is very expensive, so it's only something you can do if you have been managing your mana properly throughout the dungeon or for the boss. Most of the time what I will see happen is someone will be at like 50% mana and they'll have 20 stacks of Mana Tea, but because they're not and there's not a lot of healing happening, they're not drinking down their stacks. So technically, if you were to be drinking down your stacks in that situation, you would have a DPS loss, but if there's no damage happening, it is worth the trade-off of a little bit of DPS for your mana bar. This way you do not have to stop and drink out of combat, you will not go if something goes wrong during the boss, and you are able to generate more Mana Tea stacks so that you're not overcapped. If you're using Tranquil Tea, I also think about that as kind of a second bank for your Mana Tea stacks, where if I'm capped on my Mana Tea stacks and I don't have any Shailen's Gift Clouds, I'll just drink down about 10 so that I can keep generating more Mana Tea, but I do put them to some use through Tranquil Tea and generate my clouds. There are a lot of fights where you will be drinking like 4 or 5 stacks down at a time, either for mana maintenance or for your Shailen's Gift stacks. On fights like this one, it is important to not just stand there drinking for an extended period of time. You want to drink at lower stacks so that you're not drinking as long, so your hots are not falling off and you're not falling behind in your healing. There is a little bit of downtime on this fight when the tentacles are spawning, but outside of that, it is a very intense heal fight. Basically, any time that I cannot reach the boss, or there's no healing to do, or there's no damage to do, I am drinking. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below or while I'm live, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.